Hello, I have been reviewing Batman comics for about a year now. Actually, it should be about a year. It should be exactly 1 year since my first upload. I am going to now be using Mike's Amazing World of Comics and the League of Comic Book Geeks as two primary sources of information. Throughout my first year in all these videos, I often mentioned that I don't know who drew this or I don't know who wrote this because there is very little credits in the comic books themselves, and it was hard to find online. And so from now on, if you ever hear me mentioning, the writers or the artists for any reason whatsoever, just know that I got this information from these websites. I am going to be going back and talking about whatever I would have mentioned had I known it at the time. The first 9 issues, from what I can tell, is all Kane and Finger working together, mostly with some assistance on the side. But from issue 10, it would become a regular thing that writers would step in and artists would step in. In issue 14, story 1 is the first time I noticed a different art style. And apparently that was Jerry Robinson, who at that point had done the inking and the lettering for a lot of the issues, but not the actual penciling, which he took over for in this story. And I think out of all the artists so far, his penciling is by far my favorite. I think he has a more realistic approach to the characters and stuff, and it makes them look really cool and sleek while still keeping like the campy, fun aesthetic. He also did the art for all of these stories, which I also noticed and mentioned in the videos, but I could not tell that if it was exactly the same artist or not. Story 2 was the first one to ever be written by a woman, and so far the only one that we've seen that was written by a woman from what I can tell. And I gave it like a 3 out of 10 or something. I didn't like it very much at all, but apparently she only wrote 3 stories ever for the comic book industry in general. So that's crazy and really funny, and makes sense why it wasn't that good, I guess. But either way, she's a legend. The first woman to ever write for Batman. That's awesome. In issue 18, story 3, I noticed Jack Burnley's art style for the first time, even though apparently this was the 7th story he had done at that point, so it took me a while to notice. In issue 19, Dick Sprang takes over as the main artist, and he has probably the funniest name I've heard from the entire comic book industry so far. But also, he's very good at imitating Bob Kane's art style, because even though he did the entirety of issue 9, it took me until a 3rd story to notice that it was someone else. In issue 24, the Hypnotist gets introduced, who was my least favorite character, and he was written by Joe Samaxon, so he's in the front running for my least favorite writer. But I should mention that my least favorite story so far altogether, 3 from issue 26, I believe, was written by Don Cameron. In issue 32, Don Cameron was actually the first writer to bring back the Hypnotist, so he's actually definitely my least favorite so far. And then apparently in issue 36, Bill Finger brings him back. No, Bill! Why? Why did you bring him back? You were supposed to be the chosen one! And then in issue 38, Edmund Hamilton brings him back